Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I am here to talk today about the Collins family. You guys are going to have to excuse me. I don't have the most knowledge in the world about the Collins family. Since I stopped writing for NLQ, for No Longer Quivering at Pathos, which I did for almost 10 years, I haven't kept up with all of the Quiverfull wannabe influencers. Good morning, Jamie. But over the last couple of days, a very kind of scary, suspicious happening has started with speculation has started over the Collins family. Now, if you don't know who the Collins are, there's a lady by the name of Karissa Collins, Morning Prairie, and she has a pile of children. And she has made it her life's work in the last couple of years to post picture after picture after picture of her beautiful mixed race children dressed up identically or whatever, and just mix this with some, hey, sweet bee, mix this with some crazy fundy talk. I'm just going to say it, crazy Quiverfull talk. But even for Quiverfull, it's out there. What do I mean? I mean stuff like she is against medical care most of the time. Hey, Gretchen, I'm scared. I'm scared S-less right now. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, I haven't kept up with these people. I barely know who they are. I did talk about them once or twice at NLQ, but I'm starting to get worried. I mean, when people first started posting anthems in the hospital, I thought, oh, this is just like all the times. I can't remember which one of her sons it is. She had to bring frequently to get broken bones casted. Hey, Kentucky girl. So sometimes she doesn't get the bones casted. Yeah, you caught me live, Michelle. Hey, I'm probably going to start. Oh, wow. I'm sorry. I've been distracted. I just saw a parrot land outside my window with what looks like nesting material. So I may be having parrots in the yard here soon. Okay. So Karissa, I got to go back to my main topic here. Karissa is frequently posting all these pictures of this one in the hospital for breaking an arm, a leg, whatever. Yeah, Michelle. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because these are the things that keep me awake all night. My sleep is screwed up. I'll have to explain that later. But last night I was laying in bed after reading through all the stuff at Reddit and other places about poor Anthem Collins. Nobody knows for sure what's going on with her. Gretchen, yeah, I saw that she said God told her to have a baby at Target. She also claims that God told her that she's going to die in childbirth, and it'll be a glorious thing. I don't know how that could possibly be a glorious, glorious thing. Okay, Jay. Yeah, I I had to have my eyes open there, because her and I were friendly because of work. And then when she stood me up, and I was thinking, what did I do wrong? And everybody said, you didn't do anything wrong. This is who she is. And I didn't know. I didn't know. I knew she complained about stalkers. I had no idea that Steve McRae was so nice. Or the other people she explains are stalkers or not stalkers. So with Karissa, she's just posted reams and reams and reams and reams of crap online about her family in the last couple of years, trying to be a Quiverfull influencer. She doesn't believe in vaccines. She doesn't believe in traditional medicine for the most part, until you break a bone. And she constantly posts pictures of her children doing dangerous things without parental interference. Like, that's a thing. She seems to have free range children. I don't think she's using any kind of genuine, like, curriculum to teach those kids. A whole family of free range children allowed to do what they want. Oh, hey, Incognito. Incognito, here's the thing. I don't know a lot about the Collins, because just over a year ago, I quit writing about Quiverfull, and Karissa came on the scene. Well, I was starting to kind of wind down my content. And all I can say is I was just utterly horrified by everything I've seen with this newest thing with Anthem. The baby is in the hospital. Baby's not even a year old, with a C-spine collar, a cervical spine collar. That alone is concerning, that the baby's like that. And then what they're saying about, it looks like there's been some speculation, or she said the baby has some type of necrotic flesh, something to do with, oh, what do they call that? I forgot what word she used to describe it. But when at the clinic I worked at, we would have said that she had some type of, it's like a MRSA related infection that just starts rotting everything off. Free range equals feral. I agree. And I think that these kids are feral. So we have a little baby who's only not even a year, it's just under a year, in the hospital with a C-spine and supposedly with some type of infection that's not healing, that's in her body. And then yesterday, the most concerning thing of all happened. Mrs., there's not a picture of my kids I will not take in detail. I will not share, and I will not take care of my children or teach them or keep them from hurting themselves. Erased everything. She took down the Collin kids' Instagram account. She took everything down. The only thing I can find is she still has her old YouTube account up. That's still up. She hasn't taken that out. And the only thing I can think of is she's doing the delete the heck out of everything. Now I'm using that word instead of the one we were using on Reddit, because CPS is nosing around. Here's the thing about when your kids get sick enough to actually need the hospital. Doctors and nurses are mandatory reporters. So it behooves you to make sure they're at least getting regular medical checkups, because they're going to start asking those questions. If they have a year-old baby in there and they have to put a C-spine collar on the baby, and they're looking at necrotic flesh on the baby and trying to say, okay, what is going on here? Why is there a staph infection in this child? They're going to start looking at the home. And if they're looking and they're saying, oh my goodness, this kid was brought in 3 times for broken arms and legs, and they're going to start looking. And all you really have to do is Google her name and everything's there. It's not going to do her any good, because Reddit has been documenting everything about this woman for years. Absolute years. This is one of the saddest situations I've run across with somebody trying to be a Quiverfull influencer. And that's what she was trying for. That's one of the saddest parts, I think, about Quiverfull, is that every now and then somebody will look at the Duggars or whoever and say, I can outdo them. I can make as much money as them. I can go onto TV and do XYZ, get 10 trillion followers on Instagram. And then they start posting these things and doing these things. And it just never works out well. If you hold outlier opinions that run contrary to what most people consider reasonable expectations, guess what's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to run up across somebody with some authoritative power. You're going to run across somebody who is a mandatory reporter, who's going to look at your children and say, why are these children free range? Why is there no curriculum? Why do you have X amount of weird injuries on your children? And they're going to come in and they're going to take a look. The last I heard, and don't quote me on this, because like I said, I don't follow this family. I don't have all the information. I'm not going to pretend to be like KJ and start making crap up again. My understanding is that the little girl is now in ICU, pediatric ICU, which is a pretty scary, hey T King, it's a pretty scary place. Been there, done that, when my daughter had her problems with her platelets dying. It's a uncomfortable, bad place to be in as a parent. I feel for Karissa right now, because I know that worry. I know that worry and that pain all too well, of sitting there watching them treating your child for something they don't even have a name for, and wondering if your child's going to die, praying they don't, bargaining with God, making those bargains, saying, okay, God, if you do this, if you heal my child, I will go to church, I'll do this, I'll do that. That's how I ended up in Quiverfull Church in the first place, was through a bad medical thing like this. So I am thinking that we just need to keep an eye on this, but maybe pray for her. Maybe this will be the wake-up call that Karissa needs. Maybe this will bring CPS in the family's life, and the children will be looked at and evaluated, and there will be some serious changes. There'll no longer be kids jumping off the trampoline in the middle of the night without a parent watching. None of that. So that's my hope for this whole thing. I don't want to see this little girl die. That would be a terrible and tragic outcome. Even though this does happen sometimes in Quiverfull, kids die. It's not fair. It sucks. But it happens, unfortunately. I was thinking the other day about Carrie Chmielewski. I think that was her name. It was somebody we covered. Not we. It was someone that No Longer Quivering looked at pretty seriously before I came on board, when I was just volunteering some there. It's a really tragic story. Carrie was Quiverfull. Just like Karissa, she was trying to be a Quiverfull influencer online. The difference between her and Karissa was she actually had some kindness about her, and she was attempting to do the best she could with the children that she had. Must be bad if she took the parent to the hospital. She treats her broken bones and ailments at home, as they don't believe in medical care. And Jill, the win is okay still. Our prayers, yeah, exactly. So this is pretty serious. If the baby is there and they have a C-spine collar on her and all these other things are going on, it's bad. So back to Carrie. So Carrie had a blog called Carrie Be Away. And I like to follow Carrie because I like seeing what she sewed. We're both seamstresses. She came up with all kinds of interesting things. But what brought her to the attention of NLQ was that she was pregnant. And she was going to use a midwife. Let's see, where was she? In Indiana. She was in Indiana, in one of the cities about halfway through Richmond, Indiana. She was going to use this midwife that had practiced in Ohio and was kind of run out of town on a rail, I think, if I remember right. So she's using this midwife that has a pretty bad reputation. Bad outcomes, dead babies. And she was getting way, way, way too big. Everybody reading her blog was going, and that was those of us who were following her who weren't fundamentalists, saying, please, please, please go to the doctor and have yourself checked. And she kept posting how the doctor was idolatry and how Big Pharma was just an attempt to make money and blah, blah, blah. And she went to the midwife who had her go get a ultrasound. The midwife was telling her there were twins, and that's why she was so incredibly, hugely big. That's not at all what the ultrasound showed. It did not show a twin. They were trying to get her to see a real doctor. Turns out she was having preeclampsia, and she was just getting bigger and bigger. There was something haywire going on there. When she finally did go in labor at home with this particular midwife, she went into cardiac arrest, and they had to show up with the rescue squad and do CPR to get her back. And they did. They got her back. Unfortunately, the baby was born dead. Too many hours in labor. Other things went haywire. Preeclampsia, these things happen. She's lucky to be alive. Well, she was lucky to be alive, I should say. But so many people on places like Funny Snark Reddit were watching Carrie, what she was doing, and posting pictures of the funeral and various things. That basically what happened was she completely went offline, and we didn't see her again for a couple of years. Hey, Kira. we didn't see her online for a couple of years until finally we started seeing pictures of her on Facebook. She'd left the husband. She said the husband was abusive and controlling. She lost custody of her children to him, and she was working and looked perfectly normal instead of wearing those cotton jumpers and not grooming her brows or washing her hair or whatever. So she looked normal. She had a normal life. And then she died a few years later in a car accident. It was really tragic. I've always felt badly that in LQ we judged her. We didn't reach out to her to try and see if we could help her out in some way. It's just one of those things that happens. Hey, Ginger, everybody is busy. Oh, you're listening from your hospital room too, Kira. You must be ready to get your transplant. They're getting close. So that's good. So many times in Quiverfull, I always say Quiverfull is a theology that has a body count. I hope to God it does not have a body count with the Collins kids. I don't know how all those kids have managed to get to the AJR without more medical interventions. Like I said, that's something I do know about with my youngest. My other kids grew just fine with no medical intervention, but my youngest one had all kinds of problems. So I'm praying that's not the case. I'm praying that we don't have some kind of tragedy happen like what happened with Carrie Chmielewski, because she wouldn't listen to anybody talking to her. And I know that some members of Free Ginger showed up at her house with baby items and tried to talk her into going to the doctor, and it just didn't work. So I'm thinking with a lot of these things, the best thing we can do is just try to keep open communications, try to be halfway decent to people you know in your real life that are very religious. When they're struggling with stuff, just reach out to them. I wish that I lived in that community so that I could reach out to Karissa. She's got to be freaking out right now. Freaking out. But at the same time, I'm hoping that social services reaches out and does what they have to do. Yeah, it will. Doesn't care about your religion or beliefs. It will kill mother and child without medical treatment. My child and I are alive because of an emergency C-section. Prairie, you were so right about that. It killed her child and it damn near killed her. So, but going back to Quiverfull having a body count, all you have to do is go to some of the free birth communities and start reading through the very religious ones. You see that how many of these people have at least one dead child. And women in Quiverfull are completely fungible. What do I mean by that? I mean that one dies, the husband takes a younger, newer model. I've seen that happen a bunch too. Yes, I'm wishing you a safe, successful, and safe surgery. Peace and love to you. Yes, Kira, that is the best Christmas present somebody could get is an organ that they don't have or they have failing. My husband only has one kidney, and I worry about that. He's had kidney failure a couple times. They've been able to bring him back. Hope that Karissa gets the help that she needs. Yes, I hope so too. I always thought that free birth was a great idea until I had a high-risk pregnancy and complications. I used to think so too, Prairie. I used to think, oh, that sounds really neat. And my last child, I could have easily have had a home birth. My water broke at 9 in the morning. By 1 o'clock, I'm shoving that baby out. No medical intervention. It happened so quick. There was nothing they could really do but catch a baby as it was coming out. And I was ready to go home within hours, even though they wouldn't let me go home until the next day. And that was pretty awful because I had a roommate and she was not very nice. Let's just put it that way. She kept berating me for my life choices. And my life choices were pretty conventional. Hers were kind of white trash. She's telling me, she couldn't understand why no one would sign up for WIC and blah, 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 and food stamps. And now she's been getting X amount of dollars more on her check from the government and just telling me how foolish I was. So that was kind of weird. My youngest was born at 35 plus 5. We both almost died, even with medical intervention. Baby was in NICU for 2 weeks. Oh my goodness, I can't imagine that. I cannot, even though I've known so many people in my old Quiverfull church and out of it that had problems like that. It happens sometimes. Sometimes it's perfectly fine. Like I said, my last baby, I could easily have had a home birth. The one before that, no. I had some trouble getting him out. It took some time, and his had a big head. Until they actually cut me, there was no way I was going to be able to deliver that thing. So that's one thing that I think we can do is when you have somebody in your life that you know is practicing these things, just gently suggest that they might want to go get medical treatment, that it couldn't hurt to go ahead and get evaluation by a medical doctor. That's one of the things with Quiverfull. Vicki Garrison, the original person who was running No Longer Quivering, damn near died a number of times in childbirth because she shouldn't have been having more children. She had all kinds of physical problems. And the surgeons were actually getting angry with her for having more babies and saying, do not have any more children. Do not. And do you hear that? Those are very little birds here. I don't know what they are. They're little teeny tiny ones. They're black and white. And they have the most beautiful bird song. And I'm always happy when I see them come along here. So not only that, like I said, so many people in my old church had home birth too. And there were some complications. It doesn't always go perfectly. And it's always a good idea if you're going to do a home birth to at least, get treated by a medical doctor, have them take a look and just say, yes, you can probably home birth, no problem. No, you're too high risk. You really need to be in the hospital. Nobody likes going to the hospital. I admit that. I know that. And for something as routine as birth, it sure doesn't feel like you should have to go to the hospital for that. Birthing center, something like that might be a better option. But at the same time, I'm looking at Karissa and these kids, and I'm thinking, even though her kids are clean and well fed, shades of the Turpin family. When you have people that isolate their children to that degree and let them do things that are outside the societal norm and don't get them medical care, all kinds of crazy things can happen. And that also contributes to that Quiverfull death count I'm talking about, why I'm against Quiverfull in so many ways. All things I thought I wanted may be set aside for something else that will serve the well-being of my child any day and twice on Sunday. Yes, 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 yes. No, Prairie. That is not good. Your milk supply was almost nothing. Sometimes you have to supplement. There's just no way around it. And there's no way to know that unless you're actually getting the kind of medical care that can determine, hey, this is going on. I had to supplement with my youngest for a while because I wasn't producing enough milk. It just happens. I don't know why. Why demand what we want when that would make our babies suffer? Priorities. Exactly. That's the thing I wanted to say the most today. If you have kids, priority one. They really should be your priority one. Once they're grown, go off and do your own thing. Follow the Grateful Dead. Move into a convent. Whatever goofy thing you want to do. But at the same time, you got to make sure that everybody is out of your household and successfully launched into adulthood. Successfully launched. If I hadn't supplemented, she would have needed a central line. Oh, yes, that increases the danger of septic infection and death. Yes, it does. If you can avoid a central line with a baby, that's a good thing. And even something that I've seen, feeding tubes. I mean, feeding tubes are great when you need them, but they aren't the be all end all of giving your child food. I mean, they're for a time. Most of the time, they're not there forever. Birth and parenting are not Santa Claus. I don't get to tell it what I want. Exactly. I'm concerned that one of the Quiverfull moms is going to lose it like Andrea Yates. from all that pressure. Hope, yes. And that is a real thing, because if you look at the Quiverfull, yesterday I was talking about this. I was talking about, as women, society puts so many pressures on us. We put these pressures on ourselves to do everything perfectly, to have a perfect Christmas, a perfect this, a perfect that. Shoulda, woulda, couldas. You should have done. You're looking back going, oh, I should have done that. And I have to do this. I think as women, we have unique pressures put on us that don't mean a hill of beans in the long run. And I think if you're a Quiverfull mom, it's even worse. The must-dos become even larger. It's like climbing the Alps and you don't have you don't have any kind of equipment to do it with. So many times I've seen Quiverfull people doing crazy things. My husband and I were talking about this just the other day, because we saw so many Quiverfull families that are feeding their kids just pure utter crap. We were talking about obesity in the U.S. and somehow spiraled around to the Quiverfull families we knew in our old church, because a lot of them lived below the poverty line, because they lived with the thought process that dad works only at a self-employment place. He employs himself as a farmer or tuning pianos or whatever. I mean, you can literally come up, there's probably 50 things that they consider righteous to do. Yeah, follow the Grateful Dead. I just came up with that. I'm sorry. Being a mother means giving our child what they need, not doing what we want at the expense of the child's well-being. I agree. And the IBLP, perfect house can shove it. I'm going to hold my baby. That's exactly right, Prairie. All of that can shove it. None of that matters a hill of beans. So you think your kids are going to remember whether they can get off the floor, or are they going to remember you taking the time to sit down with them and read to them and things like that? I mean, you have to put yourself first. I mean, you have to put them first. And there are times when we all burn out. I had a big burnout around the year, I guess, 1999, 2000 in my motherhood. And I changed a lot of things because I was trying to do the Quiverfull thing, and I was just completely burning out. And that's when I started writing for the first time. I had wanted to write for years. I started writing fan fiction. And that was my release valve. That was my relief. That was the thing I did. I wrote fan fiction for a while before straying into actually writing original fiction and then covering different topics and stuff. So I had to find my safety valve in order to cope with living like that. And I still had to give it up. Like the Rodriguez kids. Yes, Kira. That was the other family I wanted to mention, was the Rodriguez kids. That's another family where I don't think the mother feeds them. And I've known many Quiverfull families kind of like that, where they're just so impoverished that one of the first things that go is feeding the kids. They consider getting food stamps a handout when it's not. It's, I wish the Rodriguezes would sign up for food stamps, because they cannot be making much money from his printing ministry. And what was the other thing they do? They go around doing revivals. I just don't see that there's much coming in. I could be wrong, but I suspect that's all. You have to do is look at Nuri's wedding, and you know damn good and well they don't have the pot to pee in, the window to throw it out of, or anything else. Now, the mother has gotten this addition of an actual living room to the barn dominium, this giant barn they bought, basically. A barn that had been turned into a house. And while I know in Quiverfull, people take some pretty strange steps to be able to raise all their children. Like I said, I knew one Quiverfull family where the mother didn't work because that was considered to be sinful. She did everything to be perfect. She also had kind of a breakdown like I did, and like so many others did at one point, and left the church. They left. And then went to another Quiverfull church. And how bad were they with their one? They had to live in a rental home on her father's property. A rental home very much like the one the Duggars had. And they also had a pile of children. They had so many children at one point, they turned the living room, the formal living room in the house, into a dormitory style room for the girls. They just had bunk bed after bunk bed after bunk bed in that room. And they lived very simply. I mean, what can you do on one income? And teachers in Virginia aren't so well paid. that you can support 8 children and a wife easily. Never mind the cost of traveling to the revival meetings. Prairie and traveling to Florida to see Precious Nuri and traveling to Texas. Was it Texas they all went on that family vacation? And it turns out the family vacation was at a it was at a oh, what do you call it? Like a vacation home owned by somebody that Nori's husband was related to. It was a nice place, but you would have thought from the way Jill was carrying on that her husband had booked this thing for them, much less that they were glomming on to Nuri's baby moon, because it was when she was pregnant and she was due not too much longer. So they kind of glommed onto that. I'm curious with the Rodriguez's what's going to happen next, because Jill has torn a bunch of ligaments in her knee, and some of them are partially ripped, and they're saying she needs surgery. Hey, Bliss, and there's no, and if they're anything like the fundamentalists that I knew and the Quiverfull people I knew at my old church, they don't get health insurance. They don't believe in having health insurance. They believe it's a form of gambling. So they either pay out of pocket for their expenses, or they just don't get it, or they join one of these, what are they called? Like Christian healthcare sharing organizations. I saw that happen with my best friend, Joni, who had to have a tumor removed behind her ear. It was benign, thank God. But they had to pay cash up front and then hope that the Christian healthcare thing would send them some money. They got a little bit, but I don't think they got that much. I was kind of steamed watching that because I have good health insurance. I pay out the ass for certain things. And I knew that I was paying out the ass at this particular hospital because my friend didn't have health insurance. So they're cutting the bill down to almost nothing for her. Those of us that have health insurance, finance people like Jill Rodriguez. And it's not going to be an easy road for her. Once the surgery takes place, that's just the very beginning of the expenses. My son tore his ACL the day before his 21st birthday. And this was before the Affordable Care Act extended coverage to your kids as long as they were students. And my kid was still a student. He tore the ACL the day before. We had to wait 3 months for the new thing with the ACA to kick in to cover him again under our health insurance. So that kid hobbled around for 3 months with an unrepaired ACL, and there goes pork. And it was misery. He had the surgery, and it was just the one popped tendon, and it didn't take. Lots of physical therapy later. He had to have a second, more complex surgery to repair it. And she has many more than that. And we're talking many, 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 many physical therapy sessions later. And you can't tell me she's going to be gone to those things. They're quite costly. Samaritan Ministries, that's one of them, yes. Somebody said they saw Jill at her ladies' retreat and said she looked like she felt really rough. That could be, because we know in these things people take supplements. They do not go to the doctor. And Jill is just chug-a-lugging her plexus she sells, which I wouldn't feed that to an animal, looking at what the ingredients are. That's one of the reasons me and my mom, my man of 17 years, haven't officially gotten married. I have state insurance for me and my 2 kids. It'd be almost $2,000 plus a month if we were on his insurance. Yeah, that's a consideration to think of, Bliss. That is. And I would like to see universal health care in the U.S., like everywhere else in the developed world, everywhere, even here, where there's so much poverty and the government is pretty poor. Healthcare happens. There's a healthcare system here called the CAHA. If you are a citizen or a resident, you pay monthly into the CAHA, and it's based upon what you make. I know people here who are Americans who are making very little with their retirement, and they're living off their investments like we're doing here. And they're only paying anywhere from $17 to $50 a month for the CAHA. Now, the CAHA is not luxurious. We are talking like When my husband was in the military, and we used to use military health and facilities, is very much like that. But it is standard basic care. You're not going to die. They're going to take care of you. You can get all your drugs filled for free. I told my husband, I said, it's almost worth it for us if we were to go ahead and sign up when we became residents to do that, just so we could get free prescriptions. That would be worth it. The UK has the national health, and they aren't communist. I saw in Germany, when we lived in Germany, I would see German doctors. I had my son Andy on the German economy. I had it at the Hertz Jesus Hospital in Fulda. I had him. And that was all German healthcare, except that we were going as TRICARE and, the military. The military was paying for that. But that was part of standard healthcare in Germany. Standard across the board healthcare for all kind of thing they got going on. Now I hear people here ranting about how socialist it is, how awful and all that. And I cannot help but think they don't understand what they're talking about. I'm grateful to live in Canada. I know you're taxed on everything, Ginger, and I know that some of the drugs I'm on aren't covered there. You have to pay out of pocket for some medications in Canada. I suspect here you have to pay out of pocket, because I was talking to my neurologist, who's also a board certified internal medicine doctor, and he was telling me about a couple of patients that he was treating with Xolair, and how Xolair here, you go on it for 3 or 4 months, then you go off for a couple of years. And I was kind of horrified by that. I told him, I said, when I was on Xolair, I was on it every 2 weeks for 8 years, and it did the most awesome thing to me. I was able to have a life then. And I'm still reaping the benefits of the 8 years. I've never gotten as sick again as I had been then, before they gave it to me. This is bird morning. I'm looking right now at a mott. They're the craziest looking birds. They're turquoise. They have a long tail that looks like a extended tennis racket. I know the mott are about when I see the tail wagging with the little turquoise thing at the end. Xolair is awesome, but almost impossible to get approved in the U.S. Prairie, I was on it for 8 years. I first got approved as part of a research project on it before it was actually released to the rest of the U.S. So that's how I got mine. And my insurance company decided it was better to pay for the Xolair for me and keep me out of the ER, because I was ending up there 3 or 4 times a week with an EpiPen hanging out of my leg. So you can imagine what that was running the insurance company, because our insurance picks up 100% if you're going through the ER. So I know damn good and well it was costing them a fortune. It was cheaper to buy the Xolair than it was to have me continually ending up there and needing supplemental oxygen or intubated, and all kinds of different crazy things that happened. So there's that. And I laugh because I do catch the Miami stations here. And one of the things that I see frequently that just makes me laugh are all the ads for biologic medicines. The same biologic medicines like Xolair, which was one of the first ones, that this vaccines that we're taking now for the beer virus, and so won't let me say it, COVID. So seeing all this coming out of this research is just pretty awesome, even though there are some people that aren't doing well with it. Anytime you take a biologic, it's risky. I think the vaccine is a lot less risky than a lot of the biologics in the past. Yeah, Prairie. And I used to sing, so to get intubated was a pretty bad thing. It tears up your vocal cords, if nothing else. It's just no fun. It's no fun at all. So anything that keeps me out of the ER is a good thing. And I'm still reaping the benefits, even though I've been off it since 2016 or so. Maybe farther back. I've been off it for some years now and doing fine, not having the same levels of IgE that I was having. And so here's the thing. I've talked about this a couple times. When I was first put on it, I had people in my old Quiverfull church, because I was still doing Quiverfull then, who said, how can you do that? That medicine is made from other people's antibodies and things and other people's blood. So you know damn good and well it's prisoners or winos that are giving the blood that they're using for the Xolair and for all these other treatments. And I was kind of like, soprano? I am envious. I am not a soprano. I can sing a little soprano, but not much. I'm mostly low or alto. But when I was young, I was a soprano, but not any longer. So they were telling me all this about you shouldn't take it because it's from blood products from other people, winos, criminals, blah, blah, blah. And I said, why? Why would that even matter who it came from? Said, well, one of them told me, well, it's because when you take in a blood product from one of them, you're taking in all their sin, you're taking in all the bad things they've done, you're okaying the judgment of them onto you, number one, and number two, their blood will turn you into a criminal, a wino, whatever. You're taking in their soul while you're doing that. And I was like, do you not understand how blood transfusions and biologic medicines affect people? Do you not understand how helpful it is? Obviously, the answer to that was yes. They did not understand it because none of that is true. And I can assure you, the years I was on it did not turn me into a criminal wino. And that's saying something because I like wine. It doesn't like me. How could we not take the biologic drugs other than trying to die? Yeah, you sound like, yeah, I used to, but not anymore. My voice is like this. I was singing this weekend a little bit at church and it was like, oh my God, my vocal cords are shot again. Yeah, we've not turned into criminals. You got sober. That's even better. I am all about sobriety and getting rid of whatever demons are plaguing you, whatever it is, whether it's, I had a friend that collected Beanie Babies like crazy that had to be delivered to that. And I've just known too many people with their various things. I did finally quit writing fan fiction. That was my little drug there for a while when I was having my Quiverfull mama meltdown of not being able to do everything. Prairie, that's awesome. That's the most awesome thing I've heard yet today. So that's the thing with Quiverfull. And I think what's going on right now with Karissa Collins is she's having that dark night of the soul. She's having that, oh my God, moment. Because some of the things that she's said and done lead me to believe that everything about these children is what she thinks she needs to do. She needs to be a Quiverfull mother, but because she's overwhelmed and everything else, she's disengaged. So this is her kind of breakdown, is all of that. So now she's going to have to face the music for all her choices, and that's not a fun thing. I don't envy her that at all, because you know darn good and well with what happened yesterday that social services must be somehow involved in this mess. And I don't know how Jill Rodriguez managed just to skate away. Like I said, my husband and I were talking about obesity rates in America. We were talking about Quiverfull poverty and how many Quiverfull families we knew that fed their kids the worst crap in the world or barely fed their children. Every time it would be our turn to do the after church coffee thing, I knew that I would have to buy like $80 worth of food because there were some people whose kids, that was going to be their main meal of the day, was whatever we put out for the refreshment after church. And that's pretty sad too. So Prairie, we're not criminals. We're not criminal winos. So I think it's all good. And speaking of that, I'm going to go ahead and go before I completely lose my voice. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the whole Karissa thing because I'm frightened for her. I'm frightened for her on so many levels. I'm hoping that social services can get in there and do them a solid and help them take care of those children. Tell them, hey, this has to happen for you to keep keep custody of your kids. And they start watching them like a hawk, maybe make her take a few parenting classes. Because, like I said, I just look at the things she doesn't do and the free range and think she's just in total burnout. And it happens. But she's wrapping her burnout in the Bible. And when you do that, really strange things can happen. In the meantime, we'll see how many of Jill Rodriguez's kids manage to get married and get away from her. Because I see she's doing the most typical things I saw at my old Quiverfull church, not feeding the kids, not doing this or that, not really educating them, calling it homeschooling, and doing a few IBLP wisdom sheets. I mean, that's really the common thing that a lot of them are doing. And I'm sorry, you cannot get a decent science education or math education from those booklets, much less know anything about health. There's the one that has to do with having suffered SA is one of the scariest things I've ever read. I'm going to have to pull it up and go through it point by point tomorrow. I know this is Christmas time. We're supposed to be all happy and jolly and all that nonsense. But, I got other stuff. I just can't go there. It's just not who I am. I'm not like that. Oh, but I did come into one decision about not being pressured. We're going out to eat for Christmas Day. I'm not cooking. I'm going to do a charcuterie tray and nibbles during the day, but we're going to have our main meal like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We're going to show up at this restaurant my friends own and have our Christmas meal overlooking the ocean again. And not cooking. I cook so much from scratch here in Toledo to walk on the beach, which didn't turn out real well because I don't like going to Brasalita. The water's dirty. The beach is dirty. I somehow managed to gash my foot on a piece of wood. It's just a dirty thing, but we ate it loose. What used to be Lucy's is called now, I think, Patagonia. And I've had a meal before at Patagonia, not been impressed. But yesterday I had a poke bowl that was out of this world, even if they skipped like 3 of the ingredients that they had listed on their own menu. So we had a fabulous, fabulous afternoon out, and it was just what I needed, even if I couldn't walk on the beach. So I'm just going to keep reminding you guys, do what you need to do for you during this holiday season, no matter what that looks like to everybody else. Okay, I'm going to finally go. I know I keep rambling, but that's just who I am. I'll talk to you guys later.